by the way, back then. When they first started Baccarat, the casinos didn't know what they were doing, and the shuffle and card prep that they used, it either produced a choppy shoe or a streaky shoe. So you either betting repeats or you were betting opposites, and it was easy to, it's really easy to, that's when I found out that the worst thing you can do is bet against a trend. It's the worst thing you can do in Blackjack, it's the worst thing you can do in Baccarat. Yet virtually everybody, other than us, that plays do exactly that. They bet against a trend. Now when you think about it, the odds in Baccarat are 50-50. It's either going to be bank or it's going to be player. It's 50-50. Forget about that little bit of bank edge. It makes, in the long run, we bet bank half the time and player half the time, so it doesn't make any difference. The odds are 50-50, and commission is 1.25% of the money bet. But now you go and look at the casino profit record in Baccarat. They're making 15% of the money of the money you buy chips with. They're making 15% on a 50-50 game, which means that people play stupid. They play worse than the odds of the game. They play worse than 50-50. If the casinos were only making commission, they wouldn't even be dealing Baccarat. They wouldn't be making enough money to deal Baccarat. So people play backwards. What I'm trying to teach you is how to play frontwards, how to play with biases. Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about the history of BTC. We went through SAP. SAP is a system that I designed. It's a too high system. It only bets too high. And what it does, if you think of the game, and the whole game is 1 in a row, 2 in a row, 3 in a row, and 4 or more. SAP, you take account how the events are occurring, how often they are occurring relative to their normal frequency occurrence. So we have this little chart, and you keep track of how ones are doing. Ones normally occur once every 4 plays. Are they occurring more or less than that? The same thing with 2s, same thing with 3s, and the same thing with 4 or mores. So it's always telling you whether you should bet on an event because it's occurring more than normal, or you should bet against an event because it's occurring less than normal. And some people put SAP together with NOR, and they call it NOR-SAP. But in NOR, I want to explain the difference between NOR and the 4D. And how we got to the 4D. By the way, SAP, the first 300 shoes played in the casino average plus 6 units per shoe, and plus 6 betting too high is about as good as is possible to play. It's an excellent way to play. So it's a little too much work for during the game for some people, but if you can master it, it's a very good way to play. NOR was really a simplification of SAP, and the reason I did that is because not all the members could play SAP. Some could and some couldn't. It was about 50-50. So I taught NOR, trying to make it a little bit easier. Now NOR, we bet higher, but we win more. But NOR is always betting on a bias. if the shoe is choppy, you're playing system 40, which bets opposites, because a choppy shoe is mostly opposites, okay? On the other hand, if it's repeats, you're playing F, which solely bets on repeats. And if a shoe is like neutral, it's not choppy or streaky, then it's an OT before L shoe, opposite time before last. We don't bother with time before last with nor originally, but once you learn the 4D, you'll know how the time before last works, so you can use that in your NOR play. But it's always playing on a bias. And the problem with both NOR and SAP is sometimes you don't have a bias, okay? And especially with pre-shuffled cards, quite often you don't have an identifiable bias there. So we came up, in fact, an engineer in Canada, John, asked me, if you were going to play the perfect way to play Baccarat, how would you play? And that's how the 4D got started, and it was in development for 4 years, and it got to the point where the two testers, which was John and Fiona couldn't make it, John couldn't make it here today, were winning every shoe. It was very close to 100% win rate. So on the forum, when I say it's a 95% win rate, I'm just being cautious. It's actually possible to get to the point where you win every shoe. You won't win a whole lot, but you can get to the point where you can win every shoe. And if you can win every shoe, if you practice enough and study enough so that you can win every shoe, then you can make your unit anything you want. You know, I mean, if you're winning every shoe, there's no point in playing quarters. Right? Okay, now Keith has invented this tool to help you learn the 4D, to help you learn all the elements of it, the counts and everything. It does all of that for you automatically. So I'm going to introduce Keith. Keith is my partner, and Keith is going to explain his invention. Let's take bank versus player to keep it simple. So you're going to end up with a +1 to the total for a player and a -1 for a bank. So you're counting.
We're back to English now. Going up.
Player and bank. Your count's always going to start at 0. Well, if the first play is a player, it will start at +1. If the second player is a bank, it will go back to 0. So you're always going to start at +1. But the count isn't as important as the disparity. So once we have the count, say the count ranged all the way from -2, at some point it was -2, that was the lowest it went, and at some point it was +2. Your disparity is the difference between +2 and -2, so your disparity is 4. Well, if your disparity never goes over 4 and you net bet with a 1, 2, 3, 4, you're guaranteed to win. There's no way that you can lose in a situation.
Can I chime in? Because he had a question about, can I ask this question here? He was asking about, when you were talking about disparity and how this works, here's the player banker minimum and the maximum number of each, okay? So here at 5, when it went over to banker, there were 5 players. So the maximum count of player was 5. And of course, when it changed, this number can't change because it went over the player. And then he was talking about disparity as the difference between the minimum and the maximum.
That's disparity.
Can you just?
Right. So then over here, if you look at it, the player banker disparity right here is 4. Okay, and of course the time before that it was 3 because there was 4 players in a row. and so on and so forth.
Can
Okay?
you relate your score example to that example, Ellis, that he just said? So that we have a disparity there, and then you mentioned the net
Let me do
progression.
that on the board without this. This just confuses me.
No, well, see, okay.
I'll do it on the board, but I can do
The
it
other
on
thing
the board.
is the computer's going to tell you, information you can analyze later on shoes that you've already played. It's not going to help you at the table because this is after you're already done.
No, this is the example on the score. So if you take the 1 and the 5, the minimum of 1 and the 5, we have a 4 disparity. And we have a score there of 5 in a row. And you
Yeah.
mentioned how to tie the neat progression into that.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's go to your last comment, progression. In the 4D, we're always going to use the 1, 2, 3, 4, back to 1. And the reason is because we're always playing the lowest disparity, and that's the best progression for a low disparity. When we were talking about the too high and so forth, that is if you were just going to go to a casino and net bet without regard to the 4D. You're just going to net bet. Then you got to know. But in the 4D, we always use a 1, 2, 3, 4, and back to 1. I did a bunch where the 4 went to 2, we played down 2. But when you're net betting, it makes hardly any difference. So to keep things simple, just use a 1, 2, 3, 4 negative progression. That's the best one to use because we're always playing low disparity. So now we'll go to what we mean by disparity. Can I have the board for
Yeah.
that?
You want to put it on the whiteboard, or you want me to draw it for you?
I'll do it.
All right.
I'll do it.
You can draw the whiteboard right in your empty scorecard. Perfect.
Yeah, well, yeah, I could.
Yeah, there you go. Just put the marks in there.
Yeah, why not?
I'm done.
See you later.
Just don't move the card, Keith.
We finally figured out the best way to do it.
Lunchtime, Keith.
I'm going to the bathroom.
You earned it.
Yeah, the color coded now.
Before he gets too far, adjust up to.
Oh, and you just bumped it. You're kidding me.
Okay, starting with a player, so we're +1. Bank, so we go to 0. We subtract 1. Player is back to +1, +2, +3, +2, +1, +2, +1. Now, this is a pretty good one. It's staying pretty close. But we want to know what our disparity is here. Oh, whatever that pointer. Look at my pointer. I didn't do that. We want to know what the disparity is. The disparity and the count, they're related, but they're two different things. Okay? The highest this went was +3, and the lowest it went was 0. So our disparity is the difference between 0 and +3. So our disparity here, our highest disparity here so far is 3. Now, had it gone to, say, I should have did one that had a minus in it. But like if the disparity was -1 to +3, our disparity would be 4. Now, when our disparity gets to 5, an alarm bell should go off because a 5 disparity, playing a 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5 disparity is break even. 6 disparity, you might win and you might not. But you're guaranteed, if your disparity doesn't go over 4, net betting with a 1, 2, 3, 4 is a guaranteed win. And it's going to be a sizable win.
Is that up one, down one progression? Using
No,
that?
it's 1, 2, 3, 4, back to 1 when you win.
And if the alarm bell goes off, what do you do?
Okay.
Jump.
if the alarm, the other side of the 4D is high side betting. Similar to NOR, actually. You're only betting one side, you're not net betting, okay? But in your 4 counts that Keith had up, well, still, in these 4 counts, let's say that one of these counts got to +7, maybe here. What that would mean is then 7 more opposites than repeats. Well, think about system 40. If there's 7 more opposites than repeats, you're going to kill it playing system 40. So when that hits, when this count, the highest count, hits 6 or 7, that is pointing out to you what the bias is in that shoe. So when the count gets to 6, you don't want to net bet it anymore. If the lowest disparity is 6, if the lowest, I said count, I should have said disparity. If the lowest disparity is 6, think about what that means. If the lowest disparity is 6 out of 4 disparities, that means the high disparity, or the high count, has to have gone high, real high. And you want to be betting it. It might be the bank count went way up, the player count, what opposites, repeats, opposite time before last. You've got a high count. Whenever you've got a high count and you have no low disparity, you want to be playing the highest count. Now in the testing, all they did is they flat bet the highest count. But for instance, if the highest count is OT4L, you can play OT4L just like you would with NOR. It's just going to be very advantageous because OTB4L has such a high hit rate.
I've seen this before where it makes a lot of sense, where you're on like a plus 10 OR count, and you're on a, maybe a +5 or a +10 PB count. And instead of betting opposites on that, you're looking at the player because it's going a lot of 1s, but an occasional 2, but always on the same side.
Yeah.
I'd rather lose, those 1s to make sure that I don't lose the 2s and just stay at a straight 1 all the way across and stay on the strong side.
Yeah.
Because it'll show stuff like that. And even though you still have a high OR count, you're really higher on one side than others.
That's right.
Or if you see situations where, as you mentioned at Palace Station, you had shoes that changed from streak to chop and then back and forth, you could stop betting entirely and wait for the disparity to get low again.
Yes, you can.
Or you can switch to a different disparity.
Yeah, either way.
Yeah.
Depends on how conservative or how aggressive you are.
Right.
Somebody has a pretty good tagline on the forum somewhere. It says I think it's Norm, it says when you're in doubt, wait it out.
Check it out. Yeah, wait it out. Yeah, that's Norm. Yeah, one of our best players, and he does it too. When
No, he
when
does.
you play with him,
Yeah,
a lot of
I know
times
him.
you played with him. A lot of times he doesn't bet,
I've proven his theory.
and every time he doesn't bet, you lose.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, you know what? It's better not to bet than it is to bet and lose.
That's right. Absolutely.
Progression's not a cure-all for everything.
Yeah.
And your betting choice is a player, banker, or no bet.
That's correct. A lot of people forget about the third one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And sometimes no bet is the best move. When would you do that? Well, if you're playing a certain disparity, let's say that you're playing opposite time before last, and all of a sudden you get 2 or 3 time before last plays in a row, your best option would, you don't want to bet against that, your best option would not be not bet at all and wait for it to come back to OT before L and start betting again. Just wait out the bad sections of the shoe.
I've actually done that on a chop or a 2-1-2 shoe. Where I want to bet the strong side and I won't bet the soft side. So when I see it actually chopping, I'll bet one, sit one out, bet one, sit one out. And instead of going 1 bet, 2 bet, 1 bet, 2 bet, I just sit there 1, 0, 1, 0.
Yeah, yeah.
And some people chase it and they bet the chop, but
But very often
but
it
once it
doesn't
goes
go.
to 2, now you're pushing a 3 bet
Yeah.
very quickly.
Yeah.
Can we go through the rest of the counts in this little example for some of the other guys?
Okay. I think everybody knows how to do the count now for bank and player, right? +1 for bank, -1, or +1 for player, -1 for bank. Whenever we see these numbers get high, like when they get up at around 5 or 6, we want to start looking at the highest count greater than net betting. We're going to make more money on the highest count than we will the lowest disparity, if this in fact happened to be the lowest one. Okay, this is the same thing except it's opposites versus repeats. So I'll draw that count in for this shoe. You never, under opposites and repeats, you never know what the first one was. Okay, you have to wait to play 2. Okay, this is an opposite, so that would be +1. This is an opposite, +2. This is a repeat, +1. This is a repeat, 0. Opposite, +1, 0. This is a repeat, -1. That makes it harder. And this is a 0. Now, anytime you see a bunch of zeros in the count, like you do here, you want to net bet that. That's the optimum.
I don't think that's right, Ellis. That last
Eight, you
few.
made a mistake.
Oh, which one?
8. Number 8, 9's wrong.
8 should be +1.
Here, let's.
No. 7 was right.
0 + 1, 0.
Yeah, +1.
-1.
+1.
No.
It's an
It's an
opposite.
opposite, Ellis. It goes from two bankers to one to the next
Oh,
one
yeah,
to player.
okay. I was looking at the wrong line. You're right. +1,
+2.
+2.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
But anytime you look at a count and you see a lot of zeros, like every 4 or 5 plays, it's going back to 0, that's the perfect net bet situation. Because if you're net betting that, every time you hit a 0 count, your player advantage goes up. Zeros increase your player advantage. So if you're seeing a lot of zeros there, you might even want to go to up one, down one betting. But zeros are good when you're net betting. You want to see a lot of, you don't have to see them, but that's a good thing when you're net betting because every time it goes to 0, you won your bet. Yes,
Okay, so just on this example, shoe 5, or hand 5,
yes.
it's +3 and 0. So if you were to net bet, it would be a 3 on player.
No, you're not betting, you're not betting.
You're not-
These are just your counts,
Okay.
okay? It's telling you whether you're gonna net bet player versus bank or opposites versus repeats. So far, this is as far as we've gone. And for this one, the disparity is 3, and for 0 to +3. And for this one, the disparity
There's 2.
is 0 to 2. It's only 2. So in this shoe, you want to be net betting opposites versus repeats
I see.
because it has It has the lowest count and it has the lowest disparity. The lowest disparity is more important than the lowest count. But the other thing that'll catch your eye is if you're seeing a lot of zeros in the count, that's the one that you want to be net betting, because a zero count, you always win your bet. There's no way to lose it.
But you're gonna net bet on one of the four that is the,
Lowest disparity.
Yes.
okay.
That's the whole idea, is you're going to do 4 counts, so you're going to have 4 disparities. You always bet the lowest disparity of all 4 counts. Okay, so let's do the opposite time before last. You don't know what this is. One way of doing time before last, there's various ways of doing it, but time before last is like, this is the same as this. So this is a time before last. This is different from that. So this is not a time before last. It's an OT before L. All you're doing is it the same as or opposite what it was 2 plays ago. So here we can start right here, and this is a time before last play. Time before last is always minus, so this would start out -1. Okay. Our next play is this one. This is not the same as the time before last, so we go back to 0. This is the same as time before last, so we go to -1. And this is opposite the time before last, so we go to 0. This is opposite the time before last, so we go to +1. This is opposite the time before last, so we go to +2. +2. The last one is time before last, so we're at +1. So this disparity is 3. It went from -1 to +2. So that's good, but it's not as good as this. It only has a disparity of 2. You always want to bet the lowest disparity, because I think Fiona put it well. If you just did that part of the 4D, just net bet the lowest of the 4 disparities, it would already make you a winning player without having to go to phase 2, which is single side betting. If you just did that, always net bet the lowest disparity.
But on this particular shoe that you have here,
Yeah.
if you would have net bet any of those 3, you would have won.
All 3 would have won, that's right. All 3 would have won.
At what point do you start betting? How many plays into it?
Yeah, how much
You know,
information?
I think, and there's a little bit of argument. What John said is the only trouble if you start like around hand 6 or 7, the only trouble with that is you might miss a starting run. But here's the thing, you don't know it's going to be a starting run. Just because it went 3 in a row doesn't mean it's going to go 4. I think you're best off to start in right around hand 6 or 7. But a thing to look for your is to look for a 0. So this one went to 0, but it's too early in the shoe to mean anything. Why am I
So would it
doing
be
this?
better to look for a second 0? So your firm thing is the second time you see 0, now it's time to start?
Well, you might not see a second 0 and still have a very low count, you know? But now, like this one, wait up, this is 0 count. I'm going to start playing this right there. I'm not going to wait for hand 7. As soon as I see that 0 there, I'm going to start net betting that. Because 0, the more zeros you see, the more likely it is to be the lowest one. But I'm going to start right there. This one has already gone to 3. This one's only gone to 2. So I'm going to start right there because a 0 was there. But you always get zeros in your count. So then I would say that, yeah, about hand 7 is a good place to start. And you know, and when you're playing the 4D, it's not about units per shoe. So it's about player advantage. So there's no point in betting the first 6 hands if you really don't know what to bet, you know. Chances are if you didn't know what to bet, you would have lost anyway. So yeah, either a 0 count that's in there at around play 4, 5, or 6, or hand 7 would be a good place to start, yeah.
So they're all good disparities to play on this example, but OT would be the best of the best to play.
Yeah, yeah. And by the way, you don't always get it where they're that close. You know, it's a little bit odd that they're that
But if
close.
Lower
you're,
disparity on
you
the
select which one you're gonna bet on, and
Yeah, more
then
zero.
one of the other ones gets better, so you switch
Yes.
to.
Perfect question. So, okay, so you pick this one. And so you're not betting opposites versus repeats. But suppose this happens. Suppose at this point it goes +3, +4. This is no longer the lowest disparity. So even though it might still be working okay, you're better off to go to the lowest disparity, which in this case it would probably end up being this one.
Go put the plays in.
Plus
10. Play 10.
3 on opposites would be an opposite and another opposite.
That'd be
So
+3, right? Oh, that'd be +4, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
+4, okay? And this one is opposite.
So
This
you're in
is-
chop, basically.
This is tiny. This one is tiny 4, it's +1. This one is tiny 4 last, so this is +2. This one is tiny 4 last, so this one's +3. This one's gone from -1 to 3, and this one has gone from 0 to 4. So they're
tied.
they're tied. Yeah, I wouldn't change if they're tied. But there is some argument for doing that. The count that comes up in ties is the count that's performing the best at the moment. So you might think about changing counts.
Ellis, if everything being somewhat equal, as a hierarchy, do you have a preference for the count? They're all kind of looking pretty good as a disparity, so clearly it's a winner. But do you have a hierarchy of PB first, OR, OT? What order would you put them in, if any?
I would make PB number 1 because it's easy. Your bets are going to end up straight down. You don't have to color code your bets with PB, and it's just the easiest to play. So if PB is tied for the running, I would play PB. It's easiest to do.
What would be your number 2?
And would be opposites versus repeats, because it's also easy to see once you're used to looking for it. You get to a point where you can look at a column of numbers and tell how close the opposites are to the repeats just by looking at it.
Okay. And just to round it out of the last two, which on the hierarchy, which would you play before the
This is, I hate it when this is the lowest count because it's the hardest to see. It's actually the hardest to bet because you're going back three hens. It's the hardest
Sure.
to put it's going to be the slowest, you know.
But taking that out of the equation and kind of the pure, if that was an even playing field too, the calculation, what do you think offers the most value for a win with them being equal? I know clearly PB is much easier to calculate, but from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, I think that if you had to play one or the other, you know, starting out, if I was playing pre-shuffled cards, I would play PB.
Oh.
If I was playing regular cards, I would play opposites versus repeats.
Excellent.
So Ellis, you're saying if you were a computer and you never make a mistake over your counts, you use those rather than something like OT, knowing that the casinos are trying to favor OT-based shuffles these days?
Yeah, that's why I wouldn't net bet OT, because it's usually gonna favor too much. Yeah. And see, that was the first thing I noticed was wrong with Oz's way. He started right out net betting OT. That's not gonna work. And then the shoes he sent me, it didn't work. You know, he was firing the shoe, and he couldn't net bet anymore because it was too far off. So you end up playing Nor. When you play Oz's system, you end up playing Nor. Well, you might as well have started with Nor.
Oh,
That would not be the second valuable piece of information today.
Correct?
Correct.
OT. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
These should have been 0 minus 1.
We can't do it because 20 guys looking at it, didn't catch it.
Ellis, how relevant is the fourth column? How often does
Well,
that come into play?
that's a real good question. I put that question to John. I said, look, John, OOTT, that's going to be hard to do, and it's going to be hard to teach. Do we really need it? Well, see, John's playing on his kitchen table. He's not trained to play at casino speed, although he says it's easy to do at casino speed. His reply to that was some of the shoes, and he played like 500 shoes, some of the shoes won net betting, double O, double T. But what you gotta do is you gotta measure the fact that it won some of 500 shoes. You gotta measure that against how much harder that makes it for you to play, keeping that fourth count.
And wouldn't one of the other ones have won also?
And
That's
yeah,
exactly my
sometimes
question.
one of the other one would have won also.
Or would they have at least not lost?
Yeah, yeah.
Because if you're, you come back to the thing, it's better to play perfect on a simpler system than it is to make mistakes
Right.
on a conflict.
I believe in the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. And if you want to eliminate this, at least starting out, here's what I would do. I wouldn't do this starting
A
out.
lot of data.
I would learn with these three, and after you got that down pat, so you can play it easily at casino speed, then experiment with adding this one. But conquer these first. It's just an easier learning process that way.
And even the PB is on the marquee.
And the PB is on the marquee. Yeah, you can. You say in PB, it's always noted at the bottom of the tilt board because it tells you how many P's and how many B's so far.
We're always looking for, I guess basically what you're talking about is which one has the most statistical significance. And, we're saying the fourth one. But we're always trying to look at other ways too to find statistical significance. So if you guys think of any other way to keep track that we could add to 4D that has some sort of statistical significance that we can point out, please say so. This isn't the only statistics you can keep in Baccarat.
No,
It's the ones that we find are the most effective
Most common,
at this point. So, if there's anything else that comes.
And keep to that point, the irony is if we're all sitting here taking these shoes and we go back and put them in our web-based console,
Right.
we'll find these.
That's right,
Very
we'll find the
quickly.
statistics. And that's what we're looking for.
But as we go, we will prove whether, for instance, whether it's better to bet 1, 2, 3, 4 back to 1, or is it better when you win the 4 to go to 2, to bet it 2 down. Okay. When we get enough shoes, we can prove that one way or the other, and we can tell you statistically how it worked out, Which came out best?
And it's even possible that 4D could become 3D.
Yeah.
No, I can tell you.
On the
what
third
I'm
column
playing
there,
tonight.
Ellis, the
I'll be
OT,
playing it for you.
we have a -1 and a +2. So it's a disparity of 3.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you use a net progression of 1, 2, 3, 4, we beat that every time.
Yeah.
Or it could be some combination of the.
Yeah. Anytime the count stays within a disparity of 4,
4 and below, or
no, 4, like, could be, 4 could be -2 plus.
no? Yeah, I'm sorry, but you beat the disparity of 4,
Yeah, you'll always.
not 5, but you'll beat it at 4.
Yeah, you'll always beat a disparity of 4
Oh, right, okay.
with a 1, 2, 3, 4